Right. Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me. Please feel free to use the chat function to let us know if there are any issues and if you can't hear us. Welcome to the Muslim Aid event on the Asian Tsunami 20 years on, where we are commemorating as part of our 40th anniversary year, the 20 years since the Asian Tsunami took place, with our speakers who were Muslim Aid team members from 20 years ago and continue to be part of the Muslim Aid team. And if we can please ensure that everybody is muted whilst the event is taking place, that would be great. If you face any issues with hearing us at any time, please let us know. But let me start with introductions, inshallah. My name is Louisa Fiz. I am your host for the next hour and a half, inshallah. I'm the Director of Strategy and Communications at Muslim Aid UK. Joining me, as I mentioned, are a panel of speakers from Muslim Aid, past and present, alhamdulillah. So with me is Amjad Salim, who is a board member of Muslim Aid currently, but also was there on the ground at the time, is mashallah, a non-resident fellow at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies in Doha, alongside a lot of other great things that you can learn about him from his profile. But he has been involved in peace and conflict resolution work, but also programming on the ground for a long time. Also joining me is Professor, I should say, Fadlullah Wilmot, who was involved in our operations on the ground in Indonesia and is a professor and fellow at multiple academic institutes, mashallah, and is currently a fellow of the Muslim Institute UK and also a contributor to the Australasian Muslim Times. We also have Brother Hamid Azad, who is a former CEO of Muslim Aid and was head of international programs for us and is currently a consultant at McAndrew Leadership. Also joining us is Sister Elfi Hasnita, who is works with YKMI, which is a local partner of Muslim Aid in Indonesia, and she was a member of the Indonesia Muslim Aid team during the times of the tsunami and until 2017, I believe, and has worked with multiple major donor agencies during her time. And we have with us Faisal Khan as well, who is country director of Muslim Aid in Sri Lanka and has worked with us since the time of the tsunami and is, a expert in finance and administration, but also an expert in the context on the ground, mashallah. So we welcome you all here today. We welcome you to reflect with us on what happened at the time of the tsunami, the disaster response at the time, the lessons learnt by both our team members, but also by the disaster community at large. Tsunami was a pivotal moment in the history of disaster management and response. It led to some major changes within the sector and a lot of learnings. I think on our call originally, Sister Alfie told me that, Aceh became a disaster management university for many professionals from across the globe. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from that time and also reflect on how Muslim Aid responded, commemorate both some of the stark realities that had to be faced, but also the achievements that were made in working with local communities through the lessons learned and the legacies that we've managed to leave since and continue to leave by working with the offices that we have in those locations. So the reason this event came about, like I said, is because it's our 40th anniversary year and Muslim Aid really wanted to look back and take lessons from our history, celebrate our achievements, and then look ahead in how these might influence us in our new strategic direction as we work on our strategy for the next 5 years and beyond, inshallah. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I would like to use a space to reflect with our colleagues. We'll sort of have 5 to 7 minutes each with each of our colleagues talking about their experiences, and then we'll open the floor up for question and answer, but also reflections from the peers and colleagues that we have joining us today. And I will also hopefully ask some questions regarding the experiences and the knowledge that has been shared. If you have any questions, any issues, again, I say please use the chat. There is also a question and answer function. Please forgive us. This is our first time testing and using the Teams webinar function currently. So we do have some technical support, alhamdulillah, but if there are any failings on our part, we'll try and do better, and we'll try and do whatever we can to fix. But thank you again for joining us. And without further ado, I will pass it on to Amjad, Brother Amjad, to take us into the first introduction and his experiences from the time of the tsunami, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Sister Lamis. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. A very good morning, good afternoon, and possibly good evening to you. I think Sister Elfie, but Fadlullah, I think if you're in Australia, then you're the latest of us. So thank you for joining us, and good to see everyone here. Good to see some familiar faces. So I guess I've been asked to kind of give a little context as to the tsunami in Sri Lanka. I mean, I think the tsunami was a pivotal moment in terms of how we approached humanitarian response globally, right? I think it was such a big thing that it was not only the place where it is that tsunami itself was a great learning, was a great university experience in terms of how we respond to that. But I'm going to maybe kind of focus on a couple of things there. One is the context of Sri Lanka, because I think it's important to understand where the tsunami fit into the complex history of Sri Lanka. Then I want to talk a little bit about the Muslim community, and then a little bit about what Muslim Aid did in those first couple of years. So the first aspect is the context of Sri Lanka. So in 2004, just before the tsunami, Sri Lanka was 2 years into a faltering ceasefire agreement that had been signed between the government and the LTT or the Tamil Tigers, that was signed in 2002. And that was supposed to have brought some element of peace or cessation of hostilities there. And it was faltering because at that time there was a lot of mistrust between parties, and the negotiation or the mediators at that point, which was courtesy of the Norwegian government, were struggling to kind of bring people to some level of understanding at the table. So Sri Lanka was in that process, was at a faltering time in terms of that agreement, and the tsunami came and hit largely parts of what was then war-torn areas, so the north and east. In particular, the east was the first to be affected, was tremendously affected, and then of course the north and then the south. And the reason why I'm starting with that is because the response for many organizations was, because of the conflict, was made even more difficult, because you're not only having to respond in times for the tsunami, but you also have to respond taking into account the conflict conditions. The Muslim community at that time was one of the most affected by the tsunami, because a large portion of the Muslim community lives on the coastal belt, and if you look at it, 80% of the country's coastline was affected by the tsunami, and it's estimated, although I think the figures are still to be, I think it's estimated that 1% Sri Lanka's Muslim community was killed by the tsunami, although that's to be debated. But the Muslim community was one of the most affected by that. That is there. Muslim community has also been affected by the conflict in other perspectives. And so prior to the tsunami, there was always a request by many well-wishers within Sri Lanka that an organization like Muslim Aid should be present to work to address some of the issues that the Muslim community had been facing because of the conflict. But with the tsunami, I think that that became much more apparent. And so in early 2005, The then CEO um, made a visit to Sri Lanka to assess the damage and to talk to partners that Muslim Aid had already been supporting. Muslim Aid traditionally had been supporting partners and never really had this option of having country offices, but was working through partners, and then was able to make an assessment of what some of the damage that was done and what the work that was needed to be done there. And then they took a decision that because of the amount of work to be there, because of the amount of support that was needed, Muslim Aid would need to open up a country office to support the partners doing that. And so a country office was opened in April, and I was asked to open up that office. And effectively, we looked at initially kind of 3 or 4 things. We looked at livelihood. So we know that many people had lost livelihood, and so the idea was to kind of rebuild better. But what we wanted to do was to look at not the traditional livelihood. So because everyone started giving fishing boats and everything else, and so we looked at something else where we actually looked at women-headed households, and we looked at women's employment, and we started to look at what that could look like, and we also explored providing not only equipment but also microcredit. We provided pumps to farmers in the Northeast so that a lot of their crops that have been destroyed and their equipment have been destroyed. So it was really based on community-based needs that we started to respond. We provided a water bowser to supply water because in the East in particular, they were using traditional water wells that were dug into the ground. And after the tsunami, this had become full of salt, and so there was no water wells, and so we had to bring in water to many of these villages. And one of the biggest projects that sort of came up was in the East, where basically there was a request to build houses for those who've been affected by both the conflict and the tsunami. So people who had been affected by the conflict had resettled to the coast prior, and then because of the tsunami had been forced back into where they were previously living. And so the idea was to build houses for these people. And so we started a project with a partner called the Help Sri Lanka Consortium to build what was then quite innovatively what we called a peace village, where we built houses for both the Muslim community there and the other ethnic community, the Tamil community. And so we proceeded to build 100 houses that were there. And the idea was to kind of bring these communities together to really then have them explore what the opportunities were for some sort of collaboration, particularly during times of conflict. The added interest in this was the fact that the contractors that came in to build these houses came from the other ethnic group, the Sinhalese group. So suddenly you had a little ecosystem where you had the Sinhalese, the Tamils, and the Muslims, who are the 3 main ethnic groups that are there working and collaborating together. And that project started in 2005, and then in 2007, in December, the houses were handed over. And I think over the past few years, the titles have been given. If I'm not mistaken, I think Pfizer can correct me, that last year on the anniversary of the 20th anniversary of the tsunami, the final title deeds were handed over. And so this kind of project enabled Muslim Aid to really help to kind of work with communities and to work with understanding the context there. And one of the things that really came up from that was the importance of community-based feedback and community-based engagement. And so one of the things that when we started to build these houses is we had purchased a plot of land where we would build houses of Muslims and Tamils, sort of almost living together. But one of the things that perhaps we hadn't fully recognized is the context in that part of Sri Lanka is that Muslims and Tamils don't live next to each other. They live in villages next to each other. So you'll have a Muslim village, then you'll have a Tamil village, and then you'll have a Muslim village. But you don't have villages where everyone is sort of, you have one Muslim house or Tamil house. And so when we built this, the community came and sort of said, we really like the house. We really love this. This is much better than what we've had before. But the problem is that we can't necessarily start to live next door to another ethnicity. So we had to purchase land next to the land that we purchased, so we could build houses for the Tamils. And so the idea was that we built houses on one piece of land for the Muslims, we built houses on another piece of land for the Tamils, and then we brought them together through community wells in the middle, so that there was a chance for them to talk. And this was one of the first permanent settlements that was built in this. So I know I can see Lamis putting up the hand, so I'm going to stop there. But I think this is part of the kind of work that we did. And of course, then by 2006, the conflict restarted in Sri Lanka. And so the focus from tsunami went to conflict. And then this opened up a whole different perspective there, where we then talk about the connection with our colleagues and friends from Aceh. But maybe I'll stop there, Lamis, and we can follow up with other things, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amjad. Let me just unspotlight you, inshallah. So thank you very much, Amjad, for that. That was a lot of context from the Sri Lanka part of the response. As we know, the tsunami affected multiple countries, and actually Muslim Aid responded in Sri Lanka, in Indonesia, in the south of India, and also in Somalia. And so next up, we have speaking Brother Fadlullah Wilmot, who was responding on the ground in Indonesia. Actually, I think influenced a lot of, the legacy that we've left in Indonesia, and did a lot of capacity building and knowledge sharing with the team on the ground there, and has a lot of contextual experience that I'm hoping that he will be able to share with us. So Brother Fadlullah, are you able to just test the mic?
Yep.
So inshallah, working?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Inshallah. Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Thank you very much for inviting me to join on this program. I'll just get straight to the point. Just imagine 167,000 people died in Aceh during the tsunami. And Aceh at that time had a population of about 3 million people. These people were all along the coast, and it displaced another 500,000 people. So that was the sort of the enormous impact. And then if we look at the losses, the private sector, that means the people of Aceh lost about $2.8 billion in assets. The public sector, the government buildings and hospitals, schools, lost about 1.1 billion. So the biggest loss was on the livelihoods of the people in Aceh, mainly farmers, fishermen, and traders. So those were the people who were so badly affected. And just like Sri Lanka was in a conflict situation, Aceh was in a rather different conflict situation, because there had been a continuous conflict in Aceh for about 150 years, since the Dutch invasion in 1873. So Aceh was only actually, and then there was a 30-year guerrilla war. So Aceh was only sort of conquered by the Dutch slightly before the Japanese invasion, and then after the sort of independence of Indonesia, Aceh was the only part of Indonesia that was not invaded by the British and the Dutch. So it's the only part of Aceh remaining free. After the Indonesian Revolution was successful, Aceh was isolated. Aceh was its economic situation became poorer because of centralization, and so sort of an independence war broke out, which lasted until slightly after, which lasted until it was still ongoing at the time of the tsunami. Some people think that the tsunami helped the peacefire. Actually, it was not. The president of Indonesia had decided to end the conflict through political rather than military means. So the tsunami delayed the peace force being sent to Helsinki, where they held the discussion for Achinese autonomy. But to get back to the tsunami, I was invited by Ibrahim Saar who was the CEO at that time, to go to Aceh. I went as a sort of volunteer initially, but then the enormity of the disaster was such that Muslim Aid felt they needed to establish a presence in Aceh, and then we decided that we managed to get through Hamid Assad what do you call it, an agreement with Oxfam to rebuild some houses in Aceh. And so our first effort in Aceh was to start with housing. I came from a university administration background. It was a steep learning curve. We had to learn about project management and all of these other issues. I started off with one guy and a driver because Muslim Aid didn't have a presence in Indonesia at the time. So we started off with this project in housing. There was, luckily, the Indonesian government decided to have a reconstruction and rehabilitation agency, which cut the bureaucracy and the red tape of Indonesia. So things were made much smoother than they would have been in normal times. So we managed to get our items, any import items got in very easily. We managed to get the visas for any people that needed to come. But still, with a disaster of that magnitude, then the supply chain becomes clogged and everybody is bidding for supplies. So it made the ability to get the materials needed more difficult and became more expensive. We decided very early on that our approach would be to engage with the local people. And in many countries, like Amjad said, you have different ethnic groups with different issues and different problems. The people of Aceh are very different from people in Java. So the attitude of the elite was, okay, these Acehnese, they don't know anything, so we'll come and we'll do everything for them. So there was a lack of engagement. So we decided that we would try to engage as hard as possible local people in the reconstruction effort. And we found out that when you ask questions to people in Acehnese language, it got a very different response than if you ask the questions in Indonesian language. So that the responses you get in a disaster is only as good as the questions that you ask. So so the language barrier was, luckily I spoke Acehnese, and I decided that we would employ mainly people from Aceh. And we got a contract from the International Red Cross to build temporary shelters. And we managed to get the ILO to train 60 local unemployed engineers in order to supervise the construction effort. And Muslim Aid ended up constructing more temporary shelters in a faster rate than any other of the NGOs involved. But there were problems with quality control. There were problems with corruption. There were problems with making sure people adhere to standards. Community expectations were high, and some people had different ideas what you should do. And we as Muslim Aid, we realized that the kitchen was a social space for women in Aceh. So we ensured that our kitchens were of a suitable size in the houses that we built for them. During the initial stages, I saw that the what is it called? The Catholic Relief Agency was getting huge $25 million contracts. So I thought to myself, why we as Muslim Aid shouldn't also be one of the big players. So we managed to convince the World Bank to provide us with a contract to do the drainage of the central business district of Banda Aceh. It was a few $1 million projects, and I signed the agreement. Luckily, we had a lot of autonomy to make our decisions at that time, in spite of some objections from the then trustees. We had some problems with fundamentalist Muslims coming to Aceh and saying, we don't want these kafir people outside helping with the reconstruction effort. Of course, that didn't affect us, but it did cause some tensions with other organizations. After we got the contract with the World Bank, which was signed by this right-wing Paul Wolfowitz, the first contract ever signed by the World Bank with an NGO, we managed to get a contract with the Asian Development Bank. And the wisdom of Hamid Azad was that we should make sure our design was excellent. And Hamid managed to get Arup, one of the leading agencies in the world on construction, to do a design review of our housing. And after and we made sure that our housing was earthquake proof. And about 15 years after the tsunami, I went back to Aceh dealing with Rohingya refugees, and I found that none of our houses had suffered damage due to the earthquakes that had come later. So because we got that advice from Arab, our building standards were higher than almost every other NGO in Aceh, and we managed to ensure that customer satisfaction was among the highest of all the NGOs in Aceh.
So, Fadlullah, I'm really sorry to have to interrupt just because we have.
I just give you two more minutes. Then we're nearly done. 2 more minutes. I think one of the most important things was we learned community engagement, treating beneficiaries as rights holders, consulting them on every project, and the weakness was we failed to get the government to do all the things that it could have done at that particular point of time in history. We can talk about that a bit later. Okay, thank you.
It wasn't even 2 more minutes, and thank you so much, Jazakallah khair. Appreciate that very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. What did you say?
I was saying Jazakallah khair, that was very insightful.
Sorry?
And you did not take 2 minutes extra. So thank you. But I think Brother Hamid will be able to continue on exactly the thread that you were talking about and more, inshallah. Brother Hamid is a former CEO of Muslim Aid, but also used to lead on international programs for us, and has worked as a consultant for Makandru Leadership, and as head of Muntata Aid, as well as having a very strong history in conflict resolution work. So very pleased to have you join us, Brother Hamid. Are you able to hear us and unmute and join?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Can you see me?
I cannot currently see you. Can you? Is he spotlighted?
We
I'm
can
seeing
hear you,
myself.
but we can't see you.
We can hear you, and now we can see you too. Jazakallah khair.
Okay.
Spotlighted. So please go ahead. 7 minutes, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm really pleased to see my old colleagues, friends here, especially Brother Fadlullah, Brother Amjad, and Faizer, mashallah. It's we actually worked as a team. In fact, fighting on the ground actually to help our tsunami affected brothers and sisters in different countries. Alhamdulillah, I was actually trying to share a presentation, but unfortunately, technology was not helping me. I don't know why. Anyway, I sent it to Sister Lamis. You have, for your reference later on, you can actually check them because it is a big presentation. So I'll try to actually cover a few points in these 7 minutes, inshallah. So you have actually heard the Indonesia and Sri Lanka perspective. I'm going to actually give a little presentation from global perspective, from the headquarter perspective. As one of my communications, actually, I mentioned to Sister Lamis, actually, tsunami brought tsunami in my career. Because I was working with a project here, the then Deputy Prime Minister Office funded project delivered by Faith Region. And then I was going back to my legal profession, but then tsunami happened. Actually, Muslim Aid dragged me in as a consultant. At that time, my position was actually as a consultant tsunami program coordinator. And following that, actually, Brother Fadlullah came on board and Brother Amjad came on board. So, and that, of course, that consultancy job never ended, and then ended up as a CEO of Muslim Aid. By the way, currently, I am actually working as a legal consultant with McAndrew. I was advisor there, but currently I am working as a legal consultant, independent consultant, and plus leading a community organization here in the UK, Pan-European Community Organization. So tsunami, after the fourth largest devastating earthquake actually in that time, which killed altogether 200,000 people across South Asia and East Africa on 26 December 2004. And Brother Fadlullah and Brother Amjad already mentioned how many of them were in Sri Lanka, in Indonesia. So it actually, if I could show the actually picture, if you see Banda Aceh, the total island was actually devastated. There was nothing but destruction, nothing but actually a destroyed field. So the immediate challenges that Muslim Aid faced when Muslim Aid took this as a program, for your information, before actually tsunami, Muslim Aid was a small organization, I think around a 4 point something, nearly 5 million organization. It has field office in only seven countries and very small scale program. But tsunami actually opened the door for Muslim Aid to become international arena. It's a long story, actually. It's impossible to finish within this short period of time. However, Muslim Aid took the opportunity. At that time, the Board of Trustees and the then CEO, Brother Ibrahim Sa, that took a very strategic decision and took the opportunity to make partnership with the DEC through Oxfam. Muslim Aid was not DEC member, but they managed to actually have a partnership with Oxfam to get some DEC funding. And that funding, because of that DEC funding, actually, they brought me in as a consultant. So when I came in, immediately tried to understand what is the scale of the devastation and how we can respond. It was a mammoth task. Yeah. The immediate challenges we identified, the scale of the disaster and devastation was huge. It was still a conflict zone in the early stages, both in Indonesia, in Sri Lanka, which Brother Amjad and Brother Fadlullah mentioned. And supply constraints meant quality of materials available for large emergency response was lacking. Community expectations and understanding was really inadequate. Problem of corruption was ever present in everywhere. Governments were unwilling to deal with social issues, which Brother Fadlullah mentioned. Lack of effective coordination in delivering humanitarian support, excessive involvement of local army in coordination, need to understand all factors at play, political and bureaucratic, need for a continuous effort to obtain community understanding and sense of ownership of the process, and to have realistic expectation, and demand for speedy dispersal of funds led to difficulties in implementing community consultation and quality constraints, and too many experts at high salaries. All these are the major constraint, major challenges we faced in the beginning of our operation. So then, what Muslim Aid did? Muslim Aid response was following the, disaster and the review. We decided to actually provide temporary shelter immediately. That we did, and then long-term housing in 4 countries, mainly Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Somalia. And we provided water and sanitation program. We decided to provide flood mitigation system. It was an opportunity, the partnership opportunity with the World Bank, which Brother Fadlullah touched upon. And we decided to actually work for road and drainage system, again with World Bank and with International Red Cross Federation partnership. And then we decided to empower communities through graduate skill development program, education program, and sustainable livelihood program. So, Muslim Aid, with its partners, we actually provided 3,000 temporary shelters and around 2,500 permanent shelters in all these tsunami affected areas, and it has worked throughout Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Somalia to help those affected by the disaster. Our focus was to address the root causes of disaster by empowering communities and restoring hopes, which Brother Fadlullah a little bit touched upon. It was a very timely and I think very strategic approach Muslim Aid took. So then we agreed philosophy, or what should be our approach. We took some unique approach, unlike many other organizations, who made actually Muslim Aid, in fact, a champion in tsunami response. First approach was treat beneficiaries as valued customers, not as a beneficiary, but the way we value or enterprises value the customer, we need to actually take beneficiaries as customer. As a result, what we did, we did the consultation at all stages of the process, not only in land verification, but design and monitoring. We ensured the community is aware that the funding for the houses is their money. We are just helping to construct it for them. So that sense of ownership we try to actually develop among the beneficiaries. We treated people with dignity and respect, not as the needy people. And we also decided that we must do our best to fulfill trust the donors have in us, which Brother Fadlullah actually touched upon, that as a result what we did. And we build homes, not houses. When we are actually going to build houses, we try to make building home, not mere houses. And to meet this, we try to adjust to suit the individual preference. And
apa beda home sama houses? Sorry.
Can you hear me, Lamis?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry for that interruption. But also, 1 minute.
Okay, and then we tried to be culturally sensitive, and we decided to actually provide quality. So good quality. As a result, we employ as many locals as possible. We involve actually. There is a very interesting history. When all other charities were still on the drawing board, Muslim Aid actually managed to deliver 150 houses in Banda Aceh. It's because of Muslim Aid's unique approach of involving local people, and we try to actually give our houses in a labor-intensive way. We use local materials, and we encourage small contractors, not the big contractors. And we considered what beneficiaries wanted: the reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, and tangibility. So this is what we considered before delivering and designing and delivering our projects. As a result, alhamdulillah, to make long story short, within very short period of time, we delivered actually housing projects in all these 4 countries, and then not only housing projects, we provided livelihood program in Somalia, in Sri Lanka. Alongside housing program, we had handloom factories and other livelihood programs as well, and then peace building as well, in Sri Lanka and in Somalia and in Indonesia as well, because as Fadlullah mentioned, there was actually some tensions in terms of community cohesion. And in all these areas, we work together. And in doing so, we tried locally, we tried to build partnership, and we tried to bring local people, local partners together. At the same time, internationally, we worked in partnership with the World Bank, we worked in partnership with Oxfam, we worked in partnership with International Red Cross Federations, and we worked partnership with the government as well. So that is why this accommodative, this community approach and consultation approach and partnership approach actually worked tremendously. As a result, if I am not wrong, Brother Fadlullah can actually make correct if I am wrong. I think in Indonesia, nearly 700 charities are working. Out of these 700 charities, Muslim Aid became one of the third most efficient and trusted charity, alhamdulillah. And as Brother Fadlullah mentioned, in Sri Lanka, India, and Indonesia, we actually appointed Arup, the very world-class engineering firm, to evaluate, to review our housing project. And you will be happy to know that our housing project became world-class housing. And result, Brother Fadlullah mentioned, I feel actually jealous if I could have the opportunity to visit that area. He visited. Still, our houses are actually standing as a beautiful holiday home, mashallah. So this is how Muslim Aid actually contributed. And with this, I think, if I am not wrong, altogether in 2 years, Muslim Aid delivered nearly over 17 million worth of program in tsunami affected areas, and that made Muslim Aid a pioneer organization, and it led to get a European Commission, I think what's called this framework partnership. I forgot the name after a few years now, and Muslim Aid has become a world-class and second largest Muslim charity in the world. So this is actually Tsunami, which contributed Muslim Aid to strengthen its effort, its quality, and its management structure. Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to speak actually a few minutes on this.
Thank you. Don't disappear. That sounds like you're going somewhere. Inshallah, we will have the question answers and time for more reflections as well together. So please stay with us. But I will now move, inshallah, to Brother Faisal, who is our country director for our country office in Sri Lanka. He is the country director of Muslim Aid Sri Lanka. He has been with us since the time of the tsunami, mashallah, and has been key to the ongoing success of the Sri Lanka office. So thank you very much, Brother Faisal, for joining us. And I will pass directly over to you because we're running a little bit late. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Salamis, and then thank you for giving the opportunity to reflect the 20th anniversary of the tsunami and the same time leading to the 40th anniversary of Muslim Aid in the global arena. I think the basic information, and then how Muslim Aid has started in Sri Lanka, and then how it has put up 100 houses for 2 main communities in the eastern part of the country has been explained by our former country director and then current one of the trustees, Muslim Hizb Amjad. So I just continue where he has stopped our intervention. Soon after the kind of handing over our 100 houses, as he mentioned, still the war was going on between the government forces and then LTTE. It has become a kind of a refugee center or IDP center in 2007-8 period, where people came from the conflict area, and the Muslim and Tamil communities were able to support these people and accompany those people to giving them opportunity or shelter to be there for a period of time until the war ended or normalizing the situation where they can go back. So again, it has reflected the two communities, different ethnicities, supporting, giving the opportunity, giving the shelter to those IDPs in the area. So of course, as he mentioned, the continuous support and then engagement with those people in the area, peace villages, we were able to support those people's livelihood as well, especially in the areas of microfinance and then agriculture support, all those things. Also, we continue to support so that they will be able to continue their livelihood perspective as well. Of course, after tsunami, we were able to support some of the areas as well in the handloom support also, where that was traditionally one of the industry in the country which was devastated by the tsunami, but with the support of, I'm not mistaken, from the funding from the Muslim in Australia, we were able to restore the industry in the areas of eastern part. Just to mention, as Brother Amjad and then Fadlullah and even Hamid Brother mentioned, the tsunami, took lives of around 230,000 people across the globe in the number of areas, and then Sri Lanka alone around 45,000. If you take the kind of the devastated amount from the how it has affected the country economy, it was estimated around 1 billion worth of assets being devastated by the tsunami and affecting around 1,600 kilometers of the coastal belt, entire eastern coastal belt, and then even southern coastal belt totally devastated because of this tsunami situation. So we continue our engagement with the community, especially Muslims and Tamil community. In fact, we had number of say discussion, and the same time even to have some sort of formation of the peace committees as well, especially to engage with two communities, and then we were able to foster the situation where forming the Northeast Interfaith Forum, where the people and then especially faith leaders came together from the different faith, and then to continue their support in the tsunami affected and the same time the war affected areas as well, where still we saw, although the tsunami could have brought the kind of peace among the communities, but it didn't work as we expected, or it has happened in Bande Aceh with the government and then freedom fighter in the Aceh community. But here again, still there was kind of needed from the perspective of the involvement of faith leaders and then community leaders. Muslim Aid was continuously supporting, engaging with the those communities to bring, foster peace among the communities. Recently, just to touch up the kind of how we have continuously engaging with these two communities in the peace village in Olikulam. Recently, we had the 20th anniversary, in fact, December, where we were able to meet the entire community from the village, especially the still manage to continue their livelihood, and then we could see, say, a number of people being expanded their houses, and then even some places where they have educated their children, some doctors and teachers, and then even architectures also we were able to see from the same village where they haven't had anything when the tsunami hit, and then we provided the houses and then livelihood support for them to live in and then continue their living in those areas. At the same time, soon after the tsunami, after the putting up our 100 houses, even government also nearby village, the government established a school where the people, our tsunami affected village people, or peace village people, continue their education in this village. So after the discussion in December last year, we see we should be continuing our effort with regard to the bringing the more bringing these two communities in engaging with the some cultural and then the peace building process, and then they're taking this as a message to other part of the country as well, as we see with the engagement of the different religious leaders and then community leaders, we could take this as a model or example to other areas as well, which we wanted to see from our intervention to continue. So overall, although we put up 100 houses to bringing up to different communities, and then supporting them to be there in peace and harmony, living together in the village, we could see say another intervention as the preschools, where the primary or preschool, where kids from the Muslim and Tamil communities continuing their studies in the particular preschool as well. So I guess through this intervention, as the tsunami devastated area, we wanted to see the some peace mechanism or peace building effort to be reflecting in our intervention. So I hope that it has been seen through the Muslim-made intervention, and then hope to continue our effort and then engagement with this community in coming years as well, especially involving the peace initiatives and then taking forward, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Brother Faisal. Thank you also for keeping to time. I really appreciate that. Jazakallah khair. Up next, we will have Sister Elfie, inshallah, from our partner YKMI, the full name of which I will not say, but I'm sure Sister Elfie can pronounce for us, but you will see on your screen, inshallah. I won't butcher it by saying it myself, Sister Elfie, but you can say it as well. Sister Elfie is the chairperson of YKMI and was also on the ground from the beginning. She was part of the communities impacted in Aceh by the tsunami, knows the response from its early stages, and has lived the Muslim aid journey on the ground since in Indonesia, and can cast a lot of knowledge, contextual understanding, and experience around the local response, the local communities, and Muslim aid response, and the larger disaster management learning that took place. So I'll pass it over to Sister Elfie now, inshallah. Please take it away. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, thank you, Sister. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu asrafil anbiya mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Thank you for letting me join this webinar together with you all. This is a fantastic time for us. I meet our senior team here for Muslim Aid, especially for the speaker not here, like Brother Abi Fadullah Wilmot, also Brother Hamid Azad, also Brother Amjad, Brother Fazir. So all of us be part of the former Muslim Aid team. So this is very happy today we can join it together. come from the Indonesia. Like Sister Ramesh said, I'm currently working for the running national NGO from in Indonesia, calling Yayasan Kemanusiaan Madani Indonesia. This is effective from we starting in the response to the tsunami in Aceh. We know this is with disaster. We have already 220 have passed for the tsunami happen. So now we all commemorate this historic days. Reflecting to the many lesson and wisdom gained for this event, we remember this is, I recall again what we happened in the 20 years ago. I'm part of the staff in the Muslim Aid Indonesia under Abi Fadullah Wilbot. He's my leadership. I learned very much about the how to work as a community, work to respond to humanitarian work. So this is I really appreciate with Abi. This is like my teacher. I learned much from him. He gave the inspired to me to commitment and consistent working in the humanitarian until today. So with the Muslim Aid, we have contribute many activity. We do the rehabilitation and reconstruction program in Aceh. We building houses, drainage system, economic and recovery through the vocational training for women and the community groups. Also, we give the training for the community for baking, sewing, and other skills. So until we give the working capital for them through our microfinance Syariah. It's fantastic working for Muslim Aid. I'm already worked for Muslim Aid 15 years ago, and we Muslim Aid Indonesia working not only in Aceh, we working in Yogyakarta and also Nusa Tenggara Barat. Muslim Aid continue the working for the humanitarian disaster. So after 15 years, again, Muslim Aid should end the operation in Indonesia because the regulation from government is it all the NGO to undergo transformation and transition to local organization. This is we thanks a lot from Muslim Aid UK with extensive experience in humanitarian work and the tremendous support received from Muslim Aid UK. We receive the facilities and education training, capacity building for the team member. So we former staff from Muslim Aid transform to local NGO Yayasan Kemanusiaan Madani Indonesia. Alhamdulillah, until now we still continue the support for the give commitment to the community. We start to continue our works to empowerment the community with the guiding by empathy, compassion, and justice in Indonesia. We know from tsunami, this is also in the same time we have the conflict. This is what we call government with the Free Aceh movement. We call GAM, and this is in 29. This is we memorize after conflict. We get the tsunami, and at the time also cause of tsunami Aceh give to the peace. So this is one thing we can alhamdulillah because a long-term conflict and continue tsunami, and alhamdulillah this is peace become peaceful in Aceh. From this situation, Muslim YKMI continue the process, continue to work with the community until now. We can see our lesson learned. 20 years post tsunami, Aceh can rebuild again better infrastructure and public facility. enhance skill and technology for humanitarian work. And right now we have still a challenge, unresolved trauma. Still trauma, some people, community, they also a little bit social trust and dependency on aid still happen in Aceh. So we need to continue peace advocacy, education, and community resilience, the program in Aceh. We hope, not in Aceh, I think in Indonesia as well. We hope we can moving forward for the future that we can learn from the transforming historical lesson into digital education for youth, because this is like a legacy for us to remember, for the young generation to be remember this issue as their learn, and so also they don't need to be continue support to the community. Right now, at YKMI, as under YKMI, we committed to work with the inclusive development with community. I think from this lesson learned, we want to thanks for Muslim Aid UK. We are still committed to continue work for the humanitarian service. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Sister Alfie, for that insight. I know that there will be plenty of reflections from team members and colleagues that have joined us as well. Feel free to let us know if you would like to share a reflection. I know we have members of the programs team that are joining us as well from Muslim Aid UK and globally. So if there are people who want to add to the reflections, please do so. But I mean, personally, I find it very inspirational, having talked to all of you that were present at the time. The tsunami was one of the largest disasters that the world has ever seen, with the wide geographical impact that it had, the number of communities it impacted, and it shocked the world. And as I mentioned, it was a pivotal moment in disaster management history. There were a lot of lessons learned. We learned a lot about how to work with local communities in a more principled manner as well, lessons that we're still trying to implement as a humanitarian community today, actually. And what I found so inspirational from talking to all of you was some of the practical implementations that Muslim Aid put into practice straight away, which are things which we as a community should be doing today as part of our programming. And I find that, mashallah, the Muslim Aid team tries to take leadership on in terms of localization and principal programming, something. So as I talk to Brother Amjad, as I talk to Brother Hamid, as I talk to Fadlullah and yourself and Brother Pfizer, I found this something that motivated me and enthused me, and I hope it does to everybody else who is here today. Part of what I learned as well, although I'm just turning his camera off, I was just about to come to him, was also about the lessons we learned from the peace process in Aceh and the conflict resolution that took place, that we also took across to our communities in Sri Lanka. And Amjad, I was wondering if you could maybe reflect a little bit more on that for us, and maybe we can learn a little bit more, and the colleagues can learn a little bit more about what took place at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was mentioned that by about mid 2006, so we're talking almost about 18 months after the actual tsunami. Sri Lanka had sort of done a dramatic turn in terms of moving away from there was an election, the presidential election. So the new president came in the tsunami had also exacerbated tensions between the two parties, because there was a sharing mechanism for tsunami aid that was negotiated with the government, and that sort of failed. And so early 2006, we were facing what was potentially a return back to conflict. And so I think at some stage, with that conflict restarting and coming up again, there was a fear that this was coming back, and we kind of got diverted from thinking about tsunami to thinking about the conflict. But what we also noticed from Aceh was that there were conversations around the peace process. So I remember having that conversation with Brother Fadlullah about what went well in Aceh, why was this thing, why were some of the things here, and then when we started discussing that, we sort of felt, well, actually there might be an opportunity to learn from Aceh, right? To learn what took place in Aceh. And so by that time, this was sort of mid 2007, we had already engaged in a process with the United Methodist Committee on Relief, AMCO. It was a partnership between two faith-based organizations responding on the ground. And so we decided to bring together different folks from Aceh, from other places as well, to kind of help to understand what could this look like. And I remember at that stage, I think Brother Fatluda had this saying, I think it was an Achinese saying, he will correct me if I butcher it, but he said that there's always a time for the rain to stop and there's a time for the war to end. And if I remember, that was the translation that he gave us. And I think that was what inspired us to kind of think, maybe there's something there, right? So very early on, 2007, when the conflict was still ongoing, there was no chance of we brought these lessons, and we wanted to learn from Aceh, kind of understand what could be done. And then we followed it up in the following year with looking at what is the role of faith communities and faith leaders in that space. And so we had a second conference in 2008 what really explored this. And again, the idea was to create a space when actually there was no space, because everyone was talking about the end of the conflict. There was no space to kind of think about what happens after the conflict. And this really comes back to one of the things I think that, as you mentioned, Sister Lamis, that Muslim Aid has been very, very good at is that localization approach, right? I think even before localization became a thing in 2016, right? Muslim Aid was working on this because it worked with local partners, it consulted local partners, it sort of had local partners there, and in fact, a large portion of the initial work of Muslim Aid Sri Lanka was not to actually implement on the ground. We only started to do that once the need became much more. But actually, we were working with supporting local partners because that was the process there. So I think we got that reflection from the communities as well to kind of say that this is something that we need to do. And then we started to kind of understand how, because of our unique natures as well as a faith-based organization, where some of our funding is not necessarily driven by donors, because again, because of the immensity of funding that came from for the tsunami, right? Sometimes the donors had very, very strict conditions about where this could work. So, for example, the tsunami affected 1 to 2 kilometer width of the Sri Lankan coastline, and that was what many donors understood as tsunami affected. But if you went 3 or 4 kilometers inland, were communities that were also dependent on whether, because a large portion of the people who were affected were fishermen. They sold their products in country 5 kilometers down inside. Those communities were all affected because there was no more fishermen. But it was very hard to find donors who would be willing to kind of say that these were people who were also affected by tsunami, because people were very, very strict on that definition. But Muslim Aid, because of the variety of its funding and because it was able to break that barrier by putting in some of its own funds to kind of give, we will look in some of those areas that are tsunami affected but not directly affected. And I think that helped kind of bridge that building. And that was also coming from communities who come tell us it's not just us, but communities down the road. And I think this is the whole point of it, that we were able to kind of look at that. So, we were able to kind of build this kind of perspective of, as Faisal mentioned, the Northeast Interfaith Forum really came out of those two conferences to really help to what is the role that faith organizations, faith leaders can play, what is the role that Muslim Aid as a faith-based organization can catalyze, working with the church, working with the Buddhist temples, working with these leaders to empower those leaders to take action on the ground. I think this is where I think we continue to play, but I think we've played a role there.
Thank you very much. I'm very aware that nobody's sort of raising their hands, so I will continue until someone does. Brother Fadlullah, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. I know you pointed to some lessons learned yourself at the end of what you were saying, but you know, Brother Amjad mentioned the conversations that you had between you that played into the activities that took place in Sri Lanka thereafter. So I don't know if you would like to add any reflections to that and any lessons, I guess, that we could also take into the work that we do today.
I think the lessons that we learned from Aceh was that where you have two parties in conflict, you do need a third party for facilitation and mediation. That was needed in Aceh, and then this was in the context of a civil war, and then both parties, the independence movement and the government of Indonesia, were able to give up defining the question of sovereignty in a very rigid way. And the focus was not on human rights abuses, which were horrific in Aceh, but the parties focused on peace initiatives, confidence building, and trust building first. So that was the element of the discussions which were taking place before the tsunami in Helsinki. And so as I said before, the presence of an impartial third party was very important in the Aceh case. And here you had ASEAN, which is an Asian organization, plus the EU. So the Indonesians wouldn't feel that it's foreigner white people interfering, but you had both the EU and ASEAN involved in the peace process. So I think these were some of the lessons learned. Plus, it was very clearly defined what we're going to do, what we're going to do, and they had deadlines for doing it. So I think these were the lessons learned in Aceh from the civil war there.
And in terms of the humanitarian,
I don't know whether you would like me to add any more. Sorry?
Yes, I was just going to ask, in terms of the humanitarian response, the emergency response, were there any key lessons learned that you think, not only impact our work today, but maybe should be impacting the work of the humanitarian community more so today, but we still need to sort of take account of?
Well, I still feel that our funding is still very much reactive rather than proactive. We know that there is going to be, for example, we know 3 or 4 years in advance, there's going to be a famine in Sudan or somewhere. Our funding should be directed towards preventing that famine and working out how to store water for the future. So we need to be much more proactive in our funding, willing to spend money up front to prevent a disaster from happening before it happens. And I still don't feel that the world community, the aid community is up to that. Secondly, the whole target of local funding, still the majority of funding still is not decided on by the local community. Still, there's a long way to go. Thirdly, I'm not sure Muslim Aid now, but still I think there's been a lot of changes. Even when I was there when I was looking at Africa and Middle East, there is a need to get out of this a concept of giving things, giving clothing, giving food. There is a time for that, but it's much more effective to give cash, so that people who can make the decisions what to do themselves by themselves. So the question we should ask: if we're not giving cash, why aren't we giving cash? What's the reason we're not giving cash to people who are in need? So these are the sort of thoughts that still bug me about the way we respond, and what I see on the Muslim charities that are active in the UK and in Australia. Still, the focus is we've got out of a lot of the sort of charity concept, but still it's very much there, and we need to be much more focused on preventing or anticipating, being proactive, being preemptive, rather than being reactive.
Yes.
And then the other point is there are a lot of long-term conflicts, and we have to be prepared for dealing with long-term conflicts. And the final thing is we tend to come and we forget the long term. In Afghanistan, once the thing people give up. In Pakistan, after the floods, people stopped being concerned. In Aceh, there's still a lot of poverty. So there is a need to look. We have to be there for the long haul, and empowering local people in order to make the decisions for their lives. I think those are the few things that I still have bugged me a little bit about our situation.
I don't think they only bug you, Brother Fadlullah. I think a lot of our colleagues, our peers, would be 100% in agreement with you on those lines. I just wanted to pick up on a few of the things that you stated there in terms of the long-term funding, the proactive funding, the funneling directly to local organizations. Obviously, a lot of these were discussed also at the World Humanitarian Summit back in 2016. Which
Yes,
is
correct.
more than 8 years ago now, and were some of the key commitments made. I can't believe that almost a decade has passed upon that. But if anything, I think a lot of colleagues would agree that instead of making progress on these in recent times, we seem to be rolling back in the direction that we don't want to be going in, unfortunately. But I have to say, having joined Muslim Aid almost a year and a half ago now, that it was so pleasing to see that our programs teams take such a strong position on this, and we continue to try and move in the direction not only of localization, but also of ensuring that we are being proactive, that we are trying to take part in organizations like the START Network and the funding that they preemptively put in place and try to funnel more so in a localized fashion. It's a shame that these sorts of organizations still seem to be in the minority and playing only a small part as opposed to a larger part of the response, and something which major institutional donors partake in. But we shall continue to try and push on that. And as part of our new strategy, our 5-year strategy, where we are saying that we want to be an enabling organization, even more so than we are today, we have said that we want to take a more proactive approach. We want to move away from being a delivery aid organization to one that works for the long term and has an enabling approach in both the emergency context, but also in the development long-term context, that we ensure that we are being proactive in our approaches and not reactive only in our approaches. And inshallah, we will continue to work in that manner in our programming. But I think a key part of what you stated was something that we as a Muslim community need to take a leadership on more so, is taking our communities with us, so our supporters with us on that journey. Because we continue to give in a reactive manner as opposed to a proactive manner. And so, yes, when the media spotlight moves on, our community's giving moves on as well to a different disaster. We need to understand the need for long-term responses and how they have a greater impact on our communities in need, and the communities that we really want to support, and allow them to be more resilient in the long term, so that we don't have to be so reactive when an emergency strikes, but there is more disaster resilience in place. But again, I'm speaking, I feel like, to an audience that already knows all of that. I am going to go to Abu Akim now, who is our director of programs at Muslim Aid.
If I could just, if I could just add one point. If you look at the Muslim fundraising, how Muslims raise funds on TV, it's cringeworthy. Really, if you look at that, it's promising huge rewards. It's shaming. It's not presenting people in a dignified manner. so much of Muslim Aid. I haven't. I'm not accusing Muslim Aid of doing it. Maybe you, but so much what I see when I look at the Muslim TV in the UK and here in Australia, it's so cringeworthy the way that we appeal for money.
Again, I feel like we're preaching to the choir here, but I will add, I will try to spotlight Abu Hakim so that he may be able to add to the conversation as well and make a contribution, inshallah. Usman, you may need to help me as technical, but Abu, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes.
There you are, Bismillah. I'm not sure if you can put your camera on, but we would love to see you.
Yes. See my under the wall with the face. Yeah, it's great. It's great to thank you very much, Lamis, and it's great to listen to all the speakers to look at the history, of the impact of tsunami in the last 20 years, and it's quite interesting that looking at it from whether it's Sri Lanka or it's Indonesia, we can see a lot of similarities coming out in terms of the impact and also the lessons learned. And looking at the history for Indonesia in particular, since 2004, we have seen a series of earthquakes and tsunami. And the last, if I can recollect very well, was in 2018 in central Sulawesi. I think the cities are called Donggala and Palu, and we could see the huge impact of this tsunami there. And I believe Brother Fadullah was there at the time, and he also saw the aftershock of the earthquake, which then followed up with the tsunami itself. So it was a huge impact, but because of the local knowledge of the team and the support that we were able to provide at the time, we were able to make a huge stride. And I have to say, the credit goes to the local team. Is because of the years of experience and dealing with the impact of the earthquakes and tsunami and this series of disasters that they were able to act in time. And yet we could say that there were gaps, because in terms of, I know Amjad and Fadila have already spoken about the changes in the funding landscape, which we are still experiencing to today. And we have seen in the last 5 years of the new initiatives around anticipatory funding, which people are now getting that idea in place. Climate change financing is now becoming more prominent. Lamis, you talked about 80 years ago when the grand bargaining 1.0 was floated. That changed in 2021 after after COVID. It became grand bargaining 2.0. Yet we are still grappling with that change, with that transition, because I'm just talked about localization, but these are still areas where the world within the humanitarian space has still grappling with, and we are trying to drive that change. When YKMI became a local entity, there were series of questions whether they will be able to survive on on their own, whether there will be capacity support for the local teams. There were uncertainties around the existence of YKMI, and 7, 8 years on, they are still there. That means something was right at the time. And we just need to look at what are the areas that are not really working, that we can support them up. And I must say that even when the UK was being challenged by UNICEF, we were able to use YKMI to get a $4 million grant from UNICEF in 2018. And that was due to the fact that they were able to respond in the time. They make them mechanisms were there. The local strengths were there with support from the UK. So these are still the strength that we are still leveraging on the ground. But again, since COVID, there have been new trends. The global humanitarian space have changed a lot. Funding is a huge challenge, and we are now looking at various streams to be able to support local organization, and localization is still at the apex of our agenda, because we still see that as the way forward, because it's the only way to be able to build that trust, closeness to the community, and also ensure unfettered access. And not just only about looking at it from an humanitarian angle, but also to look at linking relief and resettlement to long-term development, which is still in its phase. And this is part of the ongoing work that we are currently embarking on in Muslim Aid.
Thank you, Abu. I think Amjad was inspired by your contribution and also wants to come in again.
Sorry,
Yes.
Mrs. Lameez, I lost you for a bit. So
It's just you had your hand up as well. I think spurred by a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think there's a couple of things I wanted to pick up on, and I think it's sparked on by what Brother Fadlullah said, what Brother Kim is saying, what Sam's also put in the chat, right? I think there's a couple of things there, right? So one is that I think Muslim Aid has been good at kind of piloting and doing these kind of innovative ways of working, and we've done that consecutively, whether it's microfinance, whether it's on shelter, whether it's on peace building, all of those things. I think what we've not been good at is the documentation and things like that. And that's something that we need to pick up, right? Because there's a whole bunch of things there that need to be done. In fact, there was a whole bunch of work and on documenting some of these processes there that I don't know whether it still exists now, and that's something we need to look at. But I think that what Abu Hakim also says is quite interesting. It goes back to that funding element, right? Is that Alhamdulillah, Muslim Aid has been very good at trying to balance the institutional fundraising with the community fundraising, which means that actually, when you have institutional fundraising, you are tied to your donors, right? I mean, the donors will have a specific requirement, and so you can negotiate with them a little bit, but to be honest, by all intents and purposes, you are pushed to that, and we're seeing the effects of donors pulling out now in the last few weeks. But where Muslim Aid has that advantage is that it has community-based fundraising, which allows it to do things that perhaps weren't done before. And I think this is something that we need to leverage much more. There's an education piece to our donors from the community, because we need to tell them that you need to do this work. But we need to be much more bolder in going out and doing some really interesting projects with folks on the ground, because you have that perspective. And so Muslim Aid has to be able to be bold to kind of test those ideas on a localization perspective, and also to bridge operations in countries. Sometimes the context, going to Sam's question, sometimes the context doesn't allow there to be much collaboration because each context is different. But if you look at it from Indonesia and Sri Lanka, definitely where this relationship really started for us to share was on the peace building, because we really wanted to kind of share what that looked like and to use that as a conversation there. And I know that later on in 2007, 2008, we started to share ideas on microfinance, so using what was being done very, very successfully in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh had really pioneered some of the Islamic microfinance work. And so we wanted to use that in Sri Lanka, and we brought that in and started to do things there. So I think that there's a number of things there. Obviously, one of the things we try to do, and again, this also goes to kind of showing the relationship between donors, is that we were trying to kind of say, for example, in Sri Lanka, I remember going to certain donors to kind of say, well, you're working with us in Indonesia, can you work with us in Sri Lanka? And so you can use that as an opportunity for that type of conversation. But equally, the country offices also become quite interesting, because I remember when Cyclone Nargis took place in 2007, I think 2008, and Brother Hamid, you remember this, right? That we were trying so hard to get visas to enter Myanmar, and it was actually through the Sri Lankan office where we managed to get a couple of visas for Muslim Aid to enter Myanmar, because there was so much resistance to foreign NGOs coming in, but we were able to use that kind of relationship, the special relationship that Sri Lanka has with Myanmar. And we used to have someone who was very knowledgeable about Buddhism and everything else. And when we went, we sat and talked to the ambassador there, and we started talking about the history of Sri Lanka and Myanmar and everything else. And that enabled us to create a space for us to enter into Myanmar. So I think it's about using that collective social capital that we have to be able to do that in a better way.
Thank you for that, Amjad. Again, I find it so interesting when I listen to you speak in terms of the history and where we are today, because coming to Muslim Aid, learning about some of these big interfaith partnerships that we have, with UNCOR, with the Church of the Latter-day Saints. I think these are things which people outside of Muslim Aid aren't generally so aware of. And actually how we've been able to build on some of these relationships, and actually, as you've just mentioned, Amjad, as well, leverage some of the relationships from country offices as well, and the social capital that we have built up and have done so effectively over the years and continue to do so, is something quite unique. And again, localization has become the buzzword, but I think, mashallah, Muslim Aid has been taking that approach through the lessons it has learned on the ground for a very long time. The question is always of how can we do it better, but also how can we influence those around us so that it's something that we take the whole community along with us in terms of improving our approaches. So I guess I would want to come back to you all. I'm not sure who might want to talk about this more on how we can take some of those lessons learned and influence our community in terms of our peers within the subsector, Muslim subsector, our peers in the larger sector, but also our community of supporters. We've mentioned sort of how the giving community works. But is there more lessons that we could take from the way we're working in our history and see how we could improve that journey for everyone? Brother Hamid or Faiza or Elfie, if you want to come in on this as well, feel free.
Thank you, Shalamis. Yeah, if you allow me. I think one very important point Brother Amjad mentioned, if that is the case, I think this is one area you need to actually give special attention to. That is the documentation. If you actually consider the history of Muslim Aid, because I was involved from 2004 till 2016 thing. So and in this period, if you see, Muslim Aid had actually tremendous growth, from a small organization to big organization, and in all the major disaster and major issues, Muslim Aid played a pivotal role. And if you are talking about the Star Network, Muslim Aid is one of the leading organizations who actually initiated one of the initiating organization to form the Star Network. We are the one of the first 19 organization. And in terms of European funding, that while many big organizations who are still actually moving around there and then getting trying to get access, Muslim Aid was in there, and then formed the framework partnership with European Commission, and then got millions of pounds for Bangladesh and for other organizations. And then if you think about Myanmar, what Brother Amjad touched upon, yeah, Myanmar government was actually stopping us, but we tried to actually get opportunities whereabout available. And from Sri Lanka, we got the opportunity, got in, and then later on we continued this. And following that, in 2012, I think Brother Abu Hakim can remember, although he was still new in Muslim Aid that time, I spent 28 days in Myanmar to open Muslim Aid office. It was a huge actually jihad there to have an office in Myanmar. But what Muslim Aid actually did, actually it learned lesson from its past, the lesson of the partnership. We worked with UNHCR, we worked with UNICEF, and then all these major players who were there, we worked together. And Brother Fadlullah can remember how big fight we had in London with Myanmar ambassador. Yeah, and that ambassador actually, he compelled to come to me and then apologize. And then within 2 days, actually, they gave us an appointment and then made all arrangement to visit Myanmar. So these, because of the continuation and coordination, strong partnership with the stakeholders, with international players and the local people, a huge, beautiful coordination work. That is why, Alhamdulillah, we progressed strength to strength. An organization every year, if you actually see the evaluation, and at that time, Alhamdulillah, at that time there's a leadership who was able to and willing to take risk. Yeah, some sort of risk, and we had actually very much structured risk analysis mechanism, and then we used to take measured risk, and because of this we had many I think in your team there are many older staff out there, they know what sort of dynamics we had to face. We had to face lots of internal challenges, but Alhamdulillah, our team, the team who were in the executive role, they are united, and they took lesson, and they continue actually learning from the events, and then progressed. So this is why my suggestion will be, and then the preventive measure. I'm not sure if it is Brother Fadlullah's time or earlier in Bangladesh when Cyclone Cedar happened. Even Bangladesh Red Cross actually learned lesson from Muslim Aid. Muslim Aid took the preventive measure. If you think about in 1990, the flood happened in Bangladesh. It killed more than 90,000, nearly 100,000 people. But to the Cyclone Cedar was much bigger scale, but it killed only 3,000 people. And I can, Alhamdulillah, very happily say Muslim Aid can take the pride that Muslim Aid compelled Bangladesh Red Crescent to take preventive measure, and Muslim Aid gave the training to the people, and as a result, because of the preventive measure, the death toll actually came down from then 90,000 to 3,000. So this is because there is a coordinated actually effort to learn lesson and documentation and improvement. So this is why the point Brother Amjad mentioned, if that is the case, I think you should go back, and then you should actually make sure that your all documents are ready. Brother Fadlullah may remember, it was actually at one point, I took the personal risk to go to the Solomon Island. It's a big, interesting history. But when Muslim Aid went to Solomon Island, in Australian newspaper, there was a banner head that Muslim Aid showed the humanitarian face of Islam in Solomon Island. I believe Brother Fadlullah has still this paper head, paper cutting, So these things happen, and these actually, every single event I'm mentioning, these actually brought Muslim Aid from one level to another level, from one level to another level. So this is why I think documentation is very important, and you should have if it is not, I'm not sure what sort of structure mechanism you have now, because I'm almost detached for many years from Muslim Aid. Continue, there should have actually a process of continuous improvement. And then if I am allowed, I suggest actually to have a sort of thinking retreat. Muslim Aid should have a sort of thinking retreat to actually get everything together, and then how to jump on. And all other things, alhamdulillah, some things you are doing very well, the community involvement, the other thing. Because in tsunami, the main, actually, one of the main factor of Muslim Aid's success, as I mentioned, out of 700 organizations, Muslim Aid became one of the 3 best organizations alongside Oxfam and World Vision, I think. But in terms of housing, Muslim Aid housing was better than World Vision housing. So all these things, from this, you can take lesson, you can take inspiration, and you can actually have plan to actually improve strength to strength. It's called in the professional arena what you can continuous improvement program. If you can actually adopt this, inshallah. And then from all field offices, I believe you have still the culture of organizing field directors, training program, or retreat, whatever. And there, actually, if you actually take all the lessons together and then make a long-term strategic plan, I think it will help us to address all the points which actually came out in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. And some of those points have definitely been taken into consideration even during our work right now. And it's good to see those points touched upon further by yourself, because it reinforces some of the improvements that we're putting in place and some of the lessons we put in place in terms of our strategic direction as well. Brother Fadlullah, I have seen your hand up. If you can keep it maybe just to a few minutes, but it would be great to hear from you, and then I will go to the other speakers for a roundup as well. I'm very aware that we haven't heard again from Brother Faizer and Sister Elfie as well, so I'll probably go to them first. Go ahead, Brother Fadlullah.
Yeah. Yes, I do think Brother Hamid reminded me of how we were willing to be proactive and take a risk. We decided, he approved me opening an office in Cambodia, and at that time they didn't want foreigners there, but we were able to use our Malaysia, because I'm a Malaysian, I have a Malaysian passport, so we were able to go there, and we met up with our contacts there, and we were the only NGO ever to get approved within 1 week. It was very difficult to register foreign NGOs in Cambodia at that time, but we took the risk. We had our contacts with people in Cambodia, and we managed to arrange for our CEO, later CEO, Saif Ahmad, was able to meet with the Prime Minister of Cambodia, which had been very difficult, because we had those local contacts and local info, as well as the, if you remember, Brother Hamid, we also, as well as Solomon Islands, we also decided to send emergency relief to the Philippines, where we didn't have an office at that particular point in time. And the final thing, when an earthquake happened in Yogyakarta, we didn't have any funding, but Muslim Aid decided, yes, we're going to send someone to Yogyakarta, which, as far as housing destruction, was worse than Aceh, but less deaths. But Muslim Aid took the proactive decision, yes, we're going to get involved. We were on the ground early, and that enabled us to get funding. And we actually, and also, as Brother Amjad said, we had our own funding. So we were able to rebuild the oldest orphanage in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta. So I think the point about local context, local contacts, and taking risks is important. Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for that. Right, I'm wary of the time. Unfortunately, it is getting to the end of our time. I would like to call on Brother Pfizer to start with. If you have any final thoughts that you would want to share with us before we close out.
Yes, thanks once again. Basically, I mean, I was listening to the second round of the our speakers. I think one of the area we were talking about, localization process, and then it has been successful in the scenario of Indonesia, and then some of the places it didn't work as we were expecting. But I think the continuous effort should be made, so that it will be kind of where we can see the localization process, and then the communities, the engagement will be more effective than the kind of coming from the another country as a NGO or something like that. So we also seen from our perspective and our engagement with the kind of the communities and then CBOs and all those things. So some of the areas we have seen the effective way of working with them when we are involving with those people. So one side is that part, and then I wanted to just touch with regard to the kind of how we wanted to engage the kind of other agencies, especially in the global arena, and then how our effort, especially from the period Brother Amjad was taking as the lead in Sri Lanka, how AMCO and Muslim Aid took the opportunity as an opportunity, making as a global partnership with the AMCO and Muslim Aid, two faith-based organizations. It has reflected, and then it has continued till now, till today. Although they are not in Sri Lanka, but the other part of the world where Muslim Aid working in one part, and then if the AMCO is not there, they are supporting Muslim Aid. So this kind of things should be seen from the old perspective of the other country offices as well. From the country office, then it could be taken to the head office level, and then it could be exported to in a bigger scale, so that it will be kind of giving the more credit to the organization, more strength to the organization as well. So those are my and then we were talking about rather respond. We need to have the kind of proactive approaches and all those. We may come to emergency, we may come to other areas of the intervention. I think we have the kind of the now emergency team where they are tirelessly working with regard to the DRR perspective, and then the pre-capacitative perspective, so that before the kind of any emergency situation or something, we can make sure that the prepositions are there with regard to the country level and the field level and the community level also, which could be kind of continued to be strength, so that the officers could be leading to such a level in the community level as well. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sister Elfie, I'll come to you next if you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with everybody.
Okay, thank you, Amos. From my part, this is what the senior panelists already share their knowledge. This is very useful for us. From my part, this is we learning strengthen the capacity building of teams is very important. What we learn from Muslim Aid until now, for example, YKMI still continue support. Alhamdulillah, we get the funding from the UNHCR, UNICEF, UNDP, and the INGO from the outside. This is very useful because we have good sharing knowledge from the Muslim Aid. Because they visit us, they share the opportunity learning. The Muslim UK send one of guys senior team to learning together and community. So we believe with the sharing session like this, also learning upgrade capacity the team is very important. So we can work with the UN body. This is fantastic because we trust, we have the capacity, so they trust us to mobilize the fund to support the community in the field. For example, at the moment, YKMI support the Rohingya refugees in Aceh. This is funded by UNHCR. So this is Alhamdulillah, we can continue support so we can learning with the others. I think this is my input. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Brother Hamid, if I come to you for a quick 30-second roundup, I hope.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Jazakallah khairan. Just to say 4 points actually, what I already explained. Look in the mirror, embody the purpose, work together, navigate beyond the horizon, share knowledge and skills. Then it will make Muslim Aid great, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. That was truly short and to the point. I appreciate that. Jazakallah khair. Brother Fadlullah, I'll come to you next, inshallah.
Okay. My final thought is just remember, complacency is the enemy. We have to improve continuously and listen to what right holders say, but also what they don't say. And finally, look at Muslim Aid through the eyes of the rights holders. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Couldn't agree more. I feel like we're getting a lot of really beautiful, reminders at the end here. I hope people are taking this down, but this is being recorded, so hopefully we'll be able to share it with everybody else as well. Last but not least, Amjad, I'm going to come to you, inshallah, to share your final thoughts as well.
Thank you first of all for inviting us and for us allowing us to be part of this journey. I mean, as Brother Hamid said, I think Muslim Aid was a truly pivotal moment for everyone, including myself. I moved my career from being an engineer to where I am now. So it was because of the opportunities that Muslim Aid gave. I think just for us not to forget that there's been a lot of great stuff that was happening. And Brother Harris has already just reminded us of. We had a really great microfinance project, which really was innovative and worked. We worked with Islamic Development Bank. We worked with a number of private sector there. We've seemed to have forgotten that, and I think let's not forget that past, right? I think the past is part of that. So maybe just to kind of say, I think don't forget to consult, don't forget to engage. And don't forget to cooperate, right? And always remember that the ability to innovate. I think it's important that we test ideas out, and then take some risks. As Brother Fadlullah has said, we took risks. We tried different things because we wanted ultimately to be able to meet people where they were. And then lastly, because we're talking about Aceh, I'm going to finish off my send with the Achenese proverb, which I think again, Brother Fadlullah has inspired me. Is when you grow, be like rice, not like grass, because as rice grows, it bends forward, right? And so the aspect of being humble as we grow, because sometimes when we grow and become this thing, we lose that, and I think it's important to have that humility in the work that we do. Jazakallah khair for inviting me. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair to all of you for joining us today. I just want to really thank all of our speakers. I want to thank everybody, our peers and colleagues that attended, who have been involved with us historically or not, but also our colleagues today from across the globe. We appreciate your attendance. This is sort of the first webinar of its kind currently for Muslim Aid. We hope to do a lot more, not just in these 2 years of our anniversary as we go into 2026. We have a host of anniversary events planned in the UK and online. So in 2025 and 2026, both giving back to our community as supporters here, but also hopefully highlighting and spotlighting all of the amazing projects that Muslim Aid has been implementing globally through its partners, through its country offices. And we really want to make sure that as we go forward, we continue to spotlight the great work of our colleagues, but also the challenges that we face, the issues that we want to challenge, that we want to change, and that we share our knowledge and we share the lessons learned with the community at large. That, you know, we aren't just working as Muslim aid to improve just ourselves, but that we're improving the community at large, that we're improving the sector at large, and we're driving forward the change that we really believe in, inshallah. That's what we're trying to do with the host of events that we're implementing across 2025 and 2026 as part of the 40th anniversary. It's about reflecting, it's about sharing, it's about celebrating, but it's also about saying, like, let's move forward together, having reflected on these challenges, having reflected on the lessons learned. Let's make sure that we're implementing them as a community and that we're developing as a community at large. So again, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your time. Again, there were some technical challenges at the beginning. We've made efforts to fix them, and I hope that it wasn't noticeable to anyone except the organizing team. But if they were, we are open to your feedback, also open to your feedback on the content and what you might want to ensure that we spotlight in future and that we talk about, so that we can go on this journey together, inshallah. We want to enable the voices of our colleagues, we want to enable the voices of our partners, and we want to enable the voices of the communities we serve and the rights holders at large. So Jazakallah khair for your time. I hope that you have a wonderful week ahead of you. I know some of you have joined us from time zones that is a lot later than the morning at which we joined here in the UK. Again, we appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you next time, inshallah. So thank you again, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
to all.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Inshallah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.